it is a cold, dark world out there. So who can you really trust? As it turns out, pretty much everyone. Now, some of you guys might be saying, oh no, Theocletian, no, I don't agree. I'm a very careful and skeptical person. But that's not really what I'm talking about. You can still be skeptical of someone, but ultimately still trust them with certain things, right? You don't go to a grocery store and constantly think, oh, wait, is this cashier out to rip me off or anything like that? Or go get your gas changed or your oil changed. And even while hearing all those stories about people getting swindled and whatnot, most of the time, if you're there, I mean, even if you have doubts, ultimately you still entrust someone with that task without getting all of the information. And this is all part of human nature because it's practically impossible for us to process all that information for every single person that we meet, to go that far in depth before making a decision. So even from an evolutionary standpoint, you had to make quick, rapid decisions whether or not a person's trustworthy. And so let's talk a little bit more about that. The most common thing that I hear, and I'm sure a lot of you guys hear this too, is when a person says another person's trustworthy because of their past experiences with them, right? So he's proven himself. And that should immediately sound alarms in your head because that's not proper logical reasoning, right? Past behavior is not a logical indicator of current actions. While they could be correlated, most of the times they are, it's not an automatic thing. And so, for example, the sort of thing you're trusting someone with in the present may be completely different from what you were trusting them with in the past on the basis of their different circumstances or maybe levels of importance, right? For example, undercover police officers use this all the time. They do all these little things to gain the confidence of these criminals, and then they lead them to the big things, right? And so I have this personal opinion. There's no real evidence for this, but I strongly believe that people, even criminals, you gotta remember, they're people too. People want to trust one another, albeit in small, limited groups, but there's that natural tendency to want to find dependable people, right? Because you don't want to go at things alone all the time. Having trustworthy people around you makes everything so much easier. But you can't really rush through the whole process, right? Or can you? Now, going back to the evolutionary perspective, a lot of scientists would say that our ancestors, they had to make these decisions very quickly, right? See some guys off in the distance, some freaking cavemen, had to decide very quickly whether they're a friend or foe. Maybe they're from a different clan. Even if they're friendly, they come bearing gifts. What really are their ulterior motives? Do you fully invite them into your house where your wife and children are just, out in the open? Or do you have a tiered response approach? And I think we can all pretty much agree that, at least intellectually speaking, there's always this tiered response, right? You don't just fully entrust someone with your life under most circumstances. Of course, there are cases of duress, right? If you crash, if I wipe out the side of the road and an ambulance comes by, my first thought is just going to be, let the guy do whatever he needs to do, right? So there is this kind of tiered response where you're kind of measuring the level of the threat and how it affects you versus how the person is coming off, right? And I think while we like to think that we process all this information all the time, we're smart enough to dig deep with every single person that we meet, I honestly think 99% of the time that just doesn't fly. We just don't have the ability to handle all that information, nor honestly do I think a lot of us care that deeply, right? We just trust the people that we trust on a daily basis at a very superficial level. But now the people who are closest to us, I think that's where most people kind of just go straight towards when they think of trust. So the last thing I just wanted to mention is just related to trusting those who are closest to you, because unlike the other people who can damage you physically or maybe mentally, the people closer to you have a greater chance of damaging you emotionally, right? So there's a lot more at stake here. And I think, again, the most common idea here is going back to that whole experience thing, right? People feel safer with those that they've had positive experiences before. And so in that sense, they're more trusting of them. But I honestly don't think that's a good policy. I don't really have a good solution for this because, I mean, as humans, we kind of build ourselves up with this empirical knowledge, right? Especially of the things that we want to see. That crap gets reinforced like no other. It just compounds, and you start seeing all the positives, right? But then why are some people so freaking paranoid? They're like constantly looking out for, someone who's done them wrong, right? And I think that's all part of human nature, because most of us, again, don't like to be hurt, don't like to be taken advantage of and whatnot. But I think looking to past examples really isn't very fulfilling. Maybe you should look at rather the way that a person thinks, the process by which he tries to justify things. I think that is a better place to start, because as long as he's not like some type of sociopath, if he does break your trust, he's going to want to provide a justification for that. And if you kind of know how a person thinks logically, you can kind of get a sense of really how far would he go out there to justify doing something wrong, right? Alright, well, hope you guys enjoyed this long rambling video. Stay tuned for future videos.